And then here's the group of 5 teams. Number 21, Tulane. Number 20, James Madison. And number 19, North Texas. And so I have a lot of friends and family that come from these types of schools that were moved up either from FCS to the FBS, or there's just a little bit of an entertainment level to the G5 schools. Like, it's kind of fun paying attention to them to a certain extent. And, if they're matched up together, it's like, oh, this is an entertaining game. Hey, we got a Tulane and Memphis on a Friday night last week. Like, I'll sit down and watch that game for sure. Like, these guys they're definitely not bad football teams. I mean, Memphis beat Arkansas. Tulane had a win earlier in the season. Navy just beat Memphis, and North Texas had a nice win earlier in the year. James Madison played Louisville decently close. So, there's just a couple of things in here. It's like, look, these are not bad athletes. And a lot of people get this impression that they're bad athletes. They just don't have the depth that these bigger schools do. They don't have the depth that even the Big 12 schools do. But do they accumulate good athletes? Absolutely. 100%. And that should not be disregarded. But North Texas is in the lead here in the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. They're 9-1 thus far. Their only loss is to South Florida at home, and they're putting up 60-plus points. But their biggest wins are Washington State, who SEC teams had trouble with, and some other, I believe an ACC team had trouble with Washington State as well. They got a loss versus UTSA. They had a win versus Washington State, a win versus UTSA, and a win versus Navy, who just beat Memphis. So, some big wins there within the G5, realm. And then South Florida, I think they're out. They're definitely out at 7-3. They've got losses to Miami, Florida. They've got Memphis as a loss, Navy as a loss, and then a win at Florida, which is their biggest hoorah of the year. And that's great. South Florida beating the Florida Gators is a great accomplishment. You're on the road in a very hostile environment. Now, whether or not the fans really truly showed up for that game and hooping and hollering, that's debatable. But that was prior to Billy Napier's being fired. Tulane is in the hunt at 8-2. That's why they're ranked. They have wins versus Northwestern, which was their big at the beginning of the year, who just played close with Michigan. You got Duke as a win. That's an impressive one, as ACC teams have played close with Duke. They have a win over Memphis on that Friday night and a win over East Carolina, who just upset one of the other AAC teams. And then their losses are to UTSA and Ole Miss. So in terms of impressive resume, I mean, you're kind of looking at Tulane being one of the most impressive, right behind North Texas. James Madison only loss came to Louisville, 14-28. Other games, in my opinion, are too small in importance to be elected as a G5 playoff contender. There's just no way. You can't do it. They're not going to eclipse that 13th ranked spot. They're not going to eclipse a playoff spot. That would be detrimental to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. No disrespect to James Madison, but you just can't do it logistically. Nonetheless, they're having a phenomenal year. Their margins of victory are definitely notable, and they've had a lot of blowouts versus teams within their own conference. So that's good to see. And they played close with Louisville. Only losing by 2 possessions is something worth noting. But, Louisville is going to end up 4th or 5th within their conference this year, pending a win against SMU. So there's that. But again, I stand true to the 8 to 12 team playoff for Group of 5 schools. I think that would be entertaining. You can either do a BCS national championship route for G5 teams to say, all right, let's have the 2 best G5 teams play one another in a championship and have their own trophy. I think that's reputable. I think that's something that's an honest and genuine accomplishment for these teams, because, what's going to happen is you're going to have these G5 teams go, we want to be in, and then they play in. And it's like, well, we don't have the money to compete against these guys. It's like, well, in the first place, why did you want to get in? Let's just play within your own category and have accomplishments through that. And then those players coming up to the ranks, freshman, sophomore, can hit the transfer portal, and you can accumulate the best young talent, develop them similar to like an above level junior college, and bring them up through the ranks, a lot like North Texas's 0-star quarterback, who's going to probably transfer to a big time school within next year or the year following. So